Hi, I'm Paul. We're going to talk about electric skateboards because I'm really excited about what's in this box. It just arrived. It's manufactured by Landwhee in cooperation with Revel. It's called the Revel Kit, and it's a derivative of the Landwhee. It's supposed to have greater acceleration, a fantastic Samsung battery. Batteries were an issue with the older Landwhees, and it has a direct drive system that allows you to put any size flywheel on it, including some really large wheels, which I'm excited about because Ottawa, where I live, does not have great roads, and I like big wheels so I don't get locked into those cracks and potholes. I've got a Terab Flex 1 from Loaded picked out to mount the board on. And just a quick little overview here. I got lots of Landwhees, got a couple boosted boards. That one's a G2 extended range. Got a couple of one wheels, and I also have this monster 8-wheeled, 4-wheel drive Landwhee with 4 batteries, which is unofficially the fastest accelerating and top speed board in Ottawa. Anyways, I'm not going to make you watch me opening the box and fast forward. I'll just pause and restart when we get the box open. Okay, and we're ready to do the reveal, and there we go. So, charging brick, cord, that's the docking station for the battery, tool, front trucks, and here, oh my gosh, look at the size of those motors. Those are huge. And this is a prototype, so a lot of these parts are 3D printed. They're just a couple weeks short of going to production. So at that point, these 3D printed white parts will be black polycarbonate. They switched to polycarbonate on the Landwhees, and those shells are very strong. Okay, and the battery pops in there. And as you can see, these are regular flywheels, so you can put any size you want on there. Those motors are huge, very reminiscent of the old Landwhee. And I think the next thing for me to do is get this mounted. So once it's on, we'll resume. Okay, so that didn't take too long. 4 bolts. I got it synced up with the remote. I'm using the original Landwhee L3-X remote. Because they're a couple weeks short of having their new remote with the LCD screen and speed and stats and power display. But there it is. Sounds like a Landwhee. Yeah, so this is exciting because the Landwhees, they did have these really giant wheels, which were great, but the rubber was a little soft on them, so the durability on those wheels was a bit low. Here you can pick out any flywheels that you like, and I have plans to put great big giant 100 or 110 millimeter ones on these ones. Well, let's take it out to the street and see what it does. So these are the Ottawa bike paths that run in front of my daughter's house, and I got her to capture a bit of drone footage. First impressions in this first run on the Revel Kit, very positive. It's a better accelerating board than the original Landwhee, much better brakes as well. The L3-X brakes were a little soft. When you put 2 L3-Xs on board and made a 4-wheel drive, they were pretty harsh, some risk of going over the front. But these are kind of Goldilocks brakes and acceleration. No risk of getting thrown off the back, but very powerful and confident acceleration. And on the braking, you can just pull back all the way on the remote and haul it down from top speed down to nothing with no risk of flying off the front and very short stopping distance. So here you'll see me do a little bit of a 90-degree, 180-degree turn. Very handy that you can have this much speed and acceleration without needing 2 drives because it leaves you that lighter front end that you can do your tic-tacking and quick sharp turns with. One of the truly great things about these bolt-on drives is that you can pick your favorite board, bolt it on, and go. The other thing that really struck me on my first ride is just how great it feels to have hub motors, but a full, complete polyurethane wheel. They feel great and the control is awesome. Okay, this is a 4-way split screen of all 4 vehicles doing the 100-meter drag race.
Identical rider, identical weight, so it's pretty scientific in that way. Rider weight makes a huge difference. So if you substituted the 220-pound rider with a 160-pound rider, I'm pretty sure you'd be seeing 10 and 11-second runs out of the faster two machines. Here are the 4 photo finishes. That's a 2-inch wide piece of red tape, and I love how it's blurred at the speeds that these machines are crossing. Anyways, here's what I think is really cool. If a 4-wheel drive Landwheel carves 4 seconds off the time of a 2-wheel drive Landwheel, then a 4-wheel drive kit would likely propel a 220-pound rider 100 meters in under 12 seconds. And for a lighter rider, you're probably looking at 9-second runs. So I am really, really eager to build a 4-wheel drive kit. So at the speeds I'm traveling, the wind makes it pretty difficult to understand what I'm saying. So I've turned down the volume and I'm just going to talk about my riding experience. So the fastest that I rode the Revel Kit was 51.1 kilometers an hour, which is pretty fast. I don't always drive that fast, but I'll tell you, it is nice to be able to drive over 40 kilometers an hour, because there are times when you have a choice between riding on the road or riding on the sidewalk. Riding on the sidewalk is not really safe, and riding on the road can be safe if you can find an opening in the traffic and then get up to the same speed as the cars, as opposed to having cars trying to pass you and squeezing you up against the curb and potentially hitting those manhole covers that can throw you. I think the last 30 seconds was a good illustration of that. This is a really busy road, but the traffic lights create pulses of traffic, and I was able to jump out in an empty pulse and travel a kilometer down to the intersection without a single car traveling behind me. So when this light turns green, I'm going to be demonstrating 100% throttle and 100% braking each time. I don't ease forward on the throttle, I don't ease back on the throttle, I just go 100%. And that's one of the things that makes this board so comfortable to ride, is you don't have to worry about modulating the throttle. The electronic speed controller just has a wonderful algorithm for very strong but very safe acceleration and braking. You know, the moment I hopped on this board, I referred to it as Goldilocks acceleration and braking, and it really is. So Ottawa has an electric longboard club, and I go out for group rides, and I've been doing it for the past 2 years or so. And I've swapped a lot of boards and tried other people's boards. And for the people who have the faster boards, they always warn me, careful, it's really powerful, it's got a lot of kick, and they're right. Those boards almost throw me off the back. But when I race those same boards, the Revel Kit beats them by a huge margin. Not for the first 10 to 15 feet, because that's when the Revel Kit is giving you a softer acceleration curve, but then it blows past them. So there's a section of this video coming up where I apply 100% brakes from about 45, 46 kilometers an hour. And I want you to pay attention to that little green line there, and I want you to watch the nice little 45-degree angle that it drops down on. And keep in mind, I'm putting no thought into this. I've just pulled the throttle back completely 100%. Here it is.
Up here, so I've got the brake on full. Really nice brakes, no worries I get thrown off the front, it just comes on.
On a lot of boards, that's a really difficult thing to do. You got to play with the throttle so you don't throw yourself off the front. So whether you decide to only travel 30 kilometers an hour or whether you decide to travel at higher speeds, there's a huge safety factor that comes from brakes like these. So there are 2 things about the Revel Kit that have just vastly improved the quality of the ride. The first thing is how wide the trucks are. There's an extra ½ inch, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it is. And the geometry also seems very much improved. So these new trucks really carve well. And the second thing is those complete polyurethane wheels. In general, electric skateboards with hub motors and those thin polyurethane sleeves just vibrate so much. It's incredibly uncomfortable on the feet, and their traction is poor as well. Nothing compares to a complete polyurethane wheel. Okay, check out this little bit of tic-tacking that I do to make this sharp turn here. The Revel Kit makes it particularly easy to do this because all the weight is so close to the rear wheels. You move some of that weight further up and you can't lift the front end up to tic-tac. So check out the miserable pavement quality on this little bit of bike path here. With conventional hub motors, you'd be worrying about damaging the hubs when you hit each of these cracks. It would also feel like standing on a jackhammer. With the Revel Kit, those 100% polyurethane wheels just absorb it all. It really doesn't feel bad at all. I mean, I'd rather be riding on smooth pavement, but it's not that bad. The durability of good quality 100% polyurethane wheels is a big factor, because Hub motor skateboards break down all the time because of broken motors, and those thin polyurethane sleeves get chipped up and chewed, and the more worn they get, the more risk the motor is of getting damaged. And those are really expensive repairs. A damaged motor has the potential to damage an ESC or a VESC, so there's just a whole lot of things that are really expensive that could go wrong when a hub motor fails. I've ridden about 300 kilometers on these wheels, and naturally they look mint. They look like they've hardly been ridden on. Okay, this intersection coming up here is another really good illustration of why it's often safer to travel faster. I've run out a bicycle path and I've got to take a busy 2-lane street both directions, travel about 2 kilometers on it to make it to some more bike paths. So when this light turns green, I'm going to gun it, get ahead of the cars. Here I go. And if you look behind me, there's this guy who decides that he should probably pass me and squeeze me up against the curve. Here he comes accelerating up behind me, but I take off and he slows down for the speed bump, and now I got a whole lane to myself, which is much safer than the alternative. And now he's way behind me. So you just earn yourself a lot of space on the road when you're not slowing down the traffic behind you. I've got the extended range battery, and its advertised maximum range is up to 29 kilometers. I got between 12 and 17 kilometers, which is not surprising because I ride hard and fast, and I'm a 220-pound rider with gear. I suspect a lighter rider on speed 1 could achieve the advertised range. Here I got to pick up my board and run across a major parkway and a median. So here I notice how relatively light the Revel Kit is. I'm comparing it to the original Landwhee and the L3-X with those heavy LiPo batteries. This is a lithium cell based unit, so it's much lighter, and it's kind of a single hand carry. It's about the same weight as the boosted board when you put it on a board like the Tarab. The Revel Kit batteries are pretty economical, so I'm planning myself on getting probably 4 extended range and maybe just 1 standard range for the odd air travel. Swappable batteries are great. You get to keep the weight down on your board for things like tic-tacking. You can throw an extra couple batteries in your backpack, and you don't have to spend all that money buying food in restaurants while you charge up for an hour or two to try and continue your ride. So there's just so many things that are good to say about swappable batteries, but if you get something like the Revel Kit, you got to buy extra batteries because otherwise you're really not taking advantage of what the board is meant for. Okay, so I've gotten set up on the bike path, and I've got a few more minutes left in my ride. And I'm going to use that time to discuss a few of the odds and ends that I haven't talked about yet. Okay, first thing, if you're going to get multiple batteries, the Revel Kit is well set up for that because you get both a charging dock and there's also a charging port in the drive. So you can charge up 2 batteries at once. The battery has a USB port in it, which is not just handy for charging up your cell phone or your remote. It also has the potential to greatly simplify getting through security at the airport with the standard range battery, because while it's arguable about whether skateboard batteries are allowed through security, power banks are specifically permitted. So that's a big plus. Okay, watch the video for these 2 curves that I jump and plow into. Bang. When I go for group rides, anyone with conventional hub motors will stop and carry their boards over those 2 curbs. Now, the people who have all-terrain wheels will just drive right over them, but I'm not a big fan of all-terrain wheels. The center of gravity is really high, which affects handling. The high-speed stability is poor, and if you kick your toe against those wheels, then they will pick up your foot and throw it down on the pavement in front of you, and that's a pretty serious impact with the pavement. So, in my opinion, large diameter, 100% polyurethane wheels are far, far safer and superior in handling compared to all-terrain wheels. And as I mentioned before, the Revel Kit allows you to choose any diameter polyurethane wheel that you like. So one very subtle improvement to the Revel Kit is the position of the power button. It used to always bug me with the Landwhee L3-X how I had to flip my board entirely on its back in order to push the power button. With the Revel Kit, the power button is located on the side, and that means you can just lift up one side of the board by a couple inches and push the power button. And that's really convenient. And when it comes to powering down, you can just turn off your remote and the Revel Kit powers down on its own. Those direct drive motors on the Revel Kit are exposed to the air and they stay cool. I went on some pretty long rides and touched the motors afterwards without burning my hands. That suggests a lot of long-term durability because motors that overheat don't last very long, and motors that stay cool last a really long time. With conventional hub motors, you've got an insulating polyurethane material wrapped entirely around the motor, so the only place for the heat to dissipate is through the axle, and that's just not nearly as effective as having the entire motor exposed to the air.
I'd like to show you a few noteworthy modifications. Starting at the top of the board, you'll notice that I've moved the trucks forward about 2 inches from the stock position, and that makes the kick longer, which makes it easier to do the tic-tacking. These 2 screws here are just for holding an outrigger, and an outrigger holds a GoPro camera, one aimed forward, and if I also liked, one aimed backwards. That keeps the cameras out of the way of my foot. Now if we go to the underside, you'll notice that I have added a 1/2 inch rubber pad. That's just to my own preference. I like a little bit more clearance and a little bit more shock absorption. And I've done that on the back as well. And I also like it because it prevents a bolt on board from slapping against the bottom of the deck and making all sorts of vibration noise. The other modification I've made is you'll notice that I've replaced the pivot bushings with 95A durometer pivot bushings, a cone bushing on the top and a barrel bushing on the bottom, and that just adds a lot of stability at the higher speeds. I've done the same pivot bushing modification on the back, and you'll notice that I've also got a Velcro strap. That is because this is a prototype and some of those are 3D printed plastic parts, which are not nearly as strong as injection molded parts. So I wanted to make sure that everything held together because I was hitting some pretty high speeds. And the last modification that I did was to put a GoPro mount on the remote, and I could have really glued it to any stick, but what I chose to do was to set up a triple remote so I could use 2 of the remotes for my 4-wheel drive unit and the center remote for the Revel Kit. And that way I can use the same remote to control both of my favorite skateboards. Notice here that I've got a tether on my 4-wheel drive skateboard, and that's because the brakes on the 4-wheel drive Landwheel are a little strong, and I want that little insurance policy to make sure I don't fly off the front. No risk of that whatsoever on the 2-wheel drive kit, and I'm told that the 2-wheel drive kit with the newer remote has programmable brakes, so there's 3 brake settings, and if you set up a 4-wheel drive unit, you can depower the brakes on both units in order to get the ideal braking for the strength of 2 drives slowing you down. So that's it. That's all I have to share about the Revel Kit. I've had it for about a month, driven about 300 kilometers on it. I've loved the ride, the handling, the acceleration, the braking, the vibration absorption. Everything seems really well put together. And I hope this helps you guys out if you're looking for a new skateboard and thinking about this one.